Hey, what is up, everybody? This is Gukill here, and today's video I'm going to be posting for you guys is my Torment 10 capable Demon Hunter Unhallowed Essence farm build. Now, Unhallowed Essence, we all know, or should know, that it's the most powerful build as far as general farming goes for Demon Hunters this season. But I have had a lot of people ask me, why are you playing Demon Hunter, and what's the benefit of playing Demon Hunter? Or there's other Demon Hunters asking me, I see you playing and you're doing so much damage, I don't understand how. Can you give me some insight? So this video hopefully is going to touch all bases as far as farming goes, at least for Torment 10 difficulty. And I do have to say, I really don't farm on Torment 10 difficulty. It really isn't very efficient for what you're trying to do, because most people are only farming Torment difficulty just to get greater rift keys, and then greater rifting is a whole nother ordeal. But in case Torment farming is what you like to do, you like to have the rush of seeing loot drop all the time, or it's just that's your way, that's your preferred method of playing, then this should cover all the bases for you for an Unhallowed Essence Demon Hunter. I've set the setting for Torment 10, and I will do a demo at the end to show you guys what this build is capable of with a little bit of commentary as we go along. So I'm going to enter the game, and we're going to talk first about gear, and then we'll break it down further into Paragon points, skills, Kanai's cube, and what gems you want to be running. So as we load into the game here, the first thing I have to say, absolute first and foremost, when it comes to using the Unhallowed Essence set, you absolutely need to have the 6-piece set. Do not waste your time trying to farm a difficulty that you won't be able to do without the 6-piece Unhallowed Essence set. It's not going to happen. It's not like the Waste set with Barbs where they get rend on their 2-piece bonus. It's not like the Immortal King set where they get their Ancients lasting until they die, and they can combine that with one other piece of gear to kind of make them do wow, awesome damage, and they're already stomping T4, T5, whatever it is. If you don't have the 6-piece set, you're going to have a very, very bad time. The set does not work without that 6-set bonus of your generators and multi-shot dealing 15% increased damage for every point of discipline you have. That hasn't changed from Season 3. That is exactly what you want to be running. Now, there's a couple of different ways that you can do this. You can either have the 6-piece, or you can have the 6-piece with Royal Ring of Grandeur as your equipped ring, which means that you can equip Hexing Pants, or you can equip a Leoric's Crown or something in here. It's not what I recommend, but it's a way that you can get your 6-piece without actually having 6 pieces, or you can put Royal Ring on your Kanai's cube in order to get the 6 set. Either way, the 6 set is an absolute mandatory part. And really, that's the only mandatory part, at least for being able to farm Torment difficulty. I would say probably 6 at a pretty good pace, but if you really want to crank it up into high gear, you're going to need the next 2 pieces I'm going to talk about. The first thing that's really important is the Yang's Recurve Legendary Bow. It's a Season 4 exclusive bow, which makes your multi-shot attack 50% faster and also reduces its resource costs by 40 to 50%-ish. It's based on what your weapon rolls with. This is a huge critical part of the build, because it's going to allow you to spam multi-shot that much faster, which is already hitting like a truck with your 6-piece bonus. It's awesome. And then the last bit here is the Dead Man's Legacy, which every time your multi-shot hits enemies below a range of 50 to 60%, depending on how yours rolled. Mine rolled not very good, but depending on how yours rolls, it'll be 50 to 60%. Multi-shot hits enemies twice. Now, when you see the juicy crits that this build is capable of, and then you think that that's hitting twice, it's awesome. This is where we start to get into the options of what you can run and what you should run. In my personal opinion, you should stick with Focus and Restraint. I understand that these rings can be kind of hard to piece together as you're gearing up, but Focus and Restraint is the way to go. You use it in combination with your Evasive Fire and your Multi-Shot, which we'll talk about in skills later, but you use it to proc a 100% increased damage at all times, combining with your 6-piece bonus, which is absolutely amazing. Other options you can go with, you could equip a Unity and a Convention of the Elements, not Convection. But you can use that if you are finding that you're taking too much damage. You could use a Royal Ring if you don't have your complete 6 set, or you just want to experiment around. Maybe you want to go balls to the wall with experience gear. You want a Leoric's Crown here, you can do that. But it's ultimately going to take away from the damage potential of this build so much that I don't recommend doing it. But there are alternatives to that, and those are the alternatives that you can go with. Your belt is not necessarily needed for the build. You could have whatever good rolled stats that you have here. I prefer to use Hunter's Wrath because I like to have my primary skill in Evasive Fire attacking faster so I can get Hatred back faster, but that's up to personal preference. Evasive Fire, with the skill that we use with it, it already gives you Hatred regeneration back at a pretty solid rate, and combined with some of the skills that you can use, you will get your Hatred back very, very fast. You could use a Witching Hour instead for just the pure damage. It takes away from your survivability a little bit, but you will deal more damage with that. You could also do Harrington Waistguard in order to get the chest boost, but that's up to personal preference as well. A lot of people don't like to click chest and they just want to kill things, so that's the way that it goes there. For bracers, again, this comes to personal preference. I prefer to use Raps of Clarity because I find that Demon Hunters are squishy as it is, and especially for the video I'm showing you with Torment 10, you really don't want to cross that line between being just the right amount of squishy and then too squishy, because then you're going to die a lot, and that's frustrating. So I like to stay safe, use Raps of Clarity, but Reaper's Wraps are also a good option here if you find that you don't have these or you just need Hatred more. Warzeshian Arm Guards are also awesome for just movement speed and getting through the rift faster. That's about all I would recommend for bracers, though. For your gems in your gear, you want to stick with dexterity gems for your main gems, obviously, and then your helm comes down to personal preference. Do you want experience or do you want life? It depends on how your experience is going. I should mention that with the amulet, guys, you just need to make sure you have a socket, crit hit chance, and crit hit damage. You can have dexterity or an element, or you can have whatever the heck it is, but those are the most important stats. What amulet you have here does not matter. There's obviously varying strength in amulets. For example, Hellfire Amulet giving you the right passive is optimal and best in slot, but you do not need this Hellfire Amulet to run the build. You just need an amulet that is going to have a socket, dexterity, crit hit damage, crit hit chance is what I prefer, but you can also have fire damage on there. That's what you need to cover. Your legendary gems, you're going to want Zay's Stone of Vengeance, because we are a ranged class as Demon Hunters. We want to stay away from things. The further away from things we are, the more damage that we deal. Damage you deal is increased by X% for every 10 yards between you and the enemy, hit with a maximum of 33% increased damage at 50 yards. With multi-shot, you can stand at a distance, and it's very, very nice. You want Bane of the Trapped, because Bane of the Trapped is the best. It is instantly procced off of a variety of things, and it increases your damage by, again, a range percent. Mine happens to be 32. It can be higher, can be lower, but either way, it's the absolute best. And then in the last video that I recorded, which I ended up getting scrapped, I used Bane of the Stricken. I recommend that you don't use Bane of the Stricken. It's not a bad gem, but it's meant mainly for greater rifting. I use Bane of the Powerful because I find that when the first elite pack goes down, the buff never really falls off, which is 20% increased damage, and you also get base 15% damage against elites. But another good alternative is Ice Blink, which is going to give you, when it's at rank 25, 10% increased crit chance against chilled enemies, and then its basic effect is that it chills enemies for you. Also nice because it procs Bane of the Trapped. That covers gear, and that covers your legendary gems that you want to be using. We'll go over to Kanai's cube over here, and I'll show you guys some of the options that you have here to use. For your weapon, Calamity is optimal, especially if you're running by yourself. Calamity is not going to get touched. If you're the only Demon Hunter in your group, Calamity is not going to get touched. It's a constant 20% increased damage because enemies you hit become marked for death. There are some different options that you can run. For example, you could run with Solanium, which I have tried in the past, and it's not amazing, but critical hits having a 4% chance to spawn a health globe. It helps the party out. If you're playing by yourself, maybe a Blood Vengeance, it helps your hatred regeneration. You could use that. Mad Monarch Scepter is also pretty solid to use as far as AoE coverage goes. Thunder Fury, if you don't have one equipped to your follower, this will help proc your Bane of the Trapped, and it's also a nice little CC slowing things. But ultimately, Calamity is what you want to go for here. Cinder Coat is optimal here because it reduces the cost of your fire skills by 30%. Combine that with a Yang's Recurve. For me, my multi-shot only costs 25 hatred. It'll vary, but not by too much. That is an amazing cost for such a high damage skill. Cinder Coat is not going to be topped, but if you have to use something different, you don't have a Cinder Coat, again, Harrington Waistguard works okay if you have a different belt and you want the chest damage. Hexing Pants of Mr. Yan, if you're not staying stationary too much, is great because that's increased regen. Leoric's Crown is always great for experience boosting or maybe getting that extra bit of health. Reaper's Wraps are always a solid option to go with for the regen if you don't have Reaper's Wraps equipped. Reaper's Wraps also acts as a pretty solid substitute for Cinder Coat. I would probably recommend that as a number 2 to Cinder Coat if you don't have it. But that's pretty much as far as I would go with that. I would stick with either Cinder Coat, Reaper's Wraps over here. Pride's Fall actually works really well. That's number 3. The thing is why do you want Cinder Coat over Pride's Fall? Well, Pride's Fall reduces your resource cost by 30% after not taking damage, whereas Cinder Coat, it's just static all the time, whether you take damage or not. And then last but not least, Convention of the Elements. This is absolutely phenomenal. You do not want to stray away from this, and I'll show you when we do the demo, but if you have to stray away from this, you can use Obsidian Ring of the Zodiac if you're using, say, Vengeance. It will constantly reduce the cooldown of this skill because you're constantly spamming a resource spending attack. You can also use Unity or Royal Ring of Grandeur depending on if you have your set bonus or if you are taking a lot of damage and you want to split that up. You can use that for survivability, but nothing is going to top Convention of the Elements. For your follower, you just want to make sure your follower has a Thunder Fury. If it doesn't have a Thunder Fury, there is a... what's it called? It's, I can't pronounce it, which is why I have to look it up. It's right here. The Unjang Do can also be good for attacking enemies, but generally when things are below 20% health, they're not going to survive for very long anyway. And having a follower cannot die is pretty crucial because for these heals, for this hatred regen and everything, you don't want your follower to be down and not giving you those benefits. For Paragon priority, you want to prioritize your movement speed first and foremost because having full movement speed lets you not have to put it onto your boots, and you want your boots to have different, better stats to contribute to your character's power and survivability. So ideally, Dexterity, Vitality, Resist All, and Multi-Shot is the way to go for that. You also want to then make a decision, really. Maximum Hatred doesn't really affect you as much. I like to put it into Maximum Hatred because that's a bigger hatred pool in order to spam multi-shot right from the get-go. But at the same time, when you think about it, it's also more you have to regen in order to get back to full, so it doesn't really have a huge presence. If you want to go for the pure best way to go for damage, Dexterity is what you want to pool all your points into next. For offense, you want to go with critical hit damage first because you're not going to be using 2 one-handers like in the Natalia's build where you don't need crit hit damage as much, because you have 2 emeralds in your weapons. In this build, you have a bow, you only have 1, so you want to get as much crit hit damage as you can. Then you put your points into crit hit chance, and then into attack speed. Cooldown reduction last because you don't really have a lot of cooldown skills, and they don't really affect your build anyway. For defense, Resist All is the king stat for anything that has to do with survivability. Put all your points into that. Demon Hunters roll off a lot of their survivability stats for multi-shot, or for crit damage or whatever it is, so put your points into life to get the most life out of it, and then go into armor lastly. And then for utility, guys, area damage works for Demon Hunters and it's amazing. Put your points into area damage, you'll thank me later when you see the damage that goes when you're facing groups of monsters. Go into resource cost reduction next because of, again, wanting to further reduce the cost of your multi-shot, and then life on hit. As far as stat priority on gear goes, nothing has really changed too much between the different seasons. For your big items, your chest, your legs, your boots, you know, your shoulders, you want to have Dexterity, Vitality, Resist All for the most part on this gear because that's going to really up your survivability. For shoulders, you want to make sure you get area damage. For your hands, this is kind of preference. You can roll area damage, you can roll resource cost reduction, but I prefer to just, especially with Ancient, get the maximum vitality that you can on this because you already sacrifice so much in survivability with your other pieces of gear. The pieces that you can stack multi-shot, stack them. So your helm, your quiver, your boots, make sure you get as much multi-shot as you can on each of those pieces of gear. And then the most critical part for this build, the 6-piece bonus, is that your generators and multi-shot deal 15% increased damage for every point of discipline you have. You need discipline on your bow. You need discipline on your quiver. You need discipline on your cloak as secondary stats. If you don't have that, you're going to do a lot less damage. You want to get as close to a roll as you can on max discipline because it's going to increase your damage a lot. For amulets and rings, you want to stick to basically crit hit chance, crit hit damage as high as you can go to maximize your stats here. So for me, I'm sitting at almost 60% crit chance, 456 crit hit damage, which is pretty great with 92%, 50, and 49. It's about as good as I'm going to get it. And then obviously area damage, I'm sitting at 70%. Fire damage is increased by 20%, and then multi-shot damage is increased by 44%. That pretty much covers everything, guys. I've done the best I can to show you some alternatives, so why don't I do a little bit of a demo here for you so you guys can see the true power of this build. But I guess I should cover skills before that, so let's go over the skills. Evasive Fire and Multi-Shot are universal. They're not going to change at all. Same with Preparation and Invigoration. The reason being, Evasive Fire Focus gives you the most hatred regeneration, and it also gives you the ability to proc your Bane of the Trapped on enemies you hit with it. And Multi-Shot Arsenal is going to be the skill that you spam because it's fire, it deals a lot of damage, and it also deals damage with the rockets that shoots out from it. Preparation Invigoration is a mandatory part because it's going to permanently increase your discipline by 15 points times 15% multi-shot damage. You guys kind of get the drift. This part is up to what you have. So if you have Cinder Coat, you're going to want to use Trail of Cinders because that's going to make this cost very, very little because it's now a fire skill. If you don't have Cinder Coat, you're going to want to stay with Tumble. If you don't like Vault, you can also go to Smokescreen and use Displacement to have movement speed or Lingering Fog. I mean, it's all up to preference. I prefer Vault to Smokescreen, but that's just my personal preference, but I think it works better for keeping things fast. This is where you can have the most kind of, I would say, up to you. It doesn't really matter what you pick here because we're just going to do so much damage to things so quickly that it's kind of up to whatever it is you want to do. So I've seen people use Sentry. I've seen people use Vengeance and Seethe. This is a cooldown. I've seen people use Rain of Vengeance. I've seen people use Caltrops and Bait the Trap to get more crit chance. That's probably what I would roll with. That's ideally what I would go with. If you don't have Calamity, I might recommend going with Mark for Death and Contagion, just so that when you apply something and then you kill it, it's going to spread to everything else. And then for your companion, this is again up to preference. I like to have Bat just because I don't like to think about hatred, especially when I'm farming. It's when I like to absolutely autopilot the most and not really micromanage it. But if you feel that you don't need a Bat companion, you can also go with Wolf Companion, which is a cooldown that's going to give you an increased damage. It's also going to give you a little pet to kind of tank for you. For passives, you absolutely need Cull of the Weak. I have Cull of the Weak on my Hellfire Amulet, so if you don't have a Hellfire Amulet with Cull of the Weak or one of these passives, I would absolutely, it's mandatory. You need Cull of the Weak on your passives. So I would probably replace Steady Aim with Cull of the Weak. I like to use Ballistics because of the 100% rocket damage. Blood Vengeance for all the health globes that drop. They're going to regen our hatred pools so that we can keep spamming multi-shot. And then Ambush is great because you're going to deal 40% additional damage to enemies above 75% health. And that works great in conjunction with Dead Man's Legacy. So I know that's a lot of information to process and that's a lot to cover. But let's get into the nitty-gritty here. And as you can see, right off the get-go, we die in a firewall. But if you didn't see right at the beginning there, this build hits like a truck. Barring dying to your environment, you will have absolutely no problems melting elites on Torment 10 difficulty. And this transitions really well into Greater Rifting as well, where you can tinker some different things up, but I'll cover that in a different video. Again, you want to try and stay as far away as possible because of the increased damage. As you can see, even elites here don't take very long to kill. Now, it's not quite as straightforward as, you know, the Detonate Monk build where you kind of just dot things up, hit a button, and everything dies. But, I mean, if you line your things up right, things die pretty quickly. And especially with fire damage from Convention, which we're going to get right now. As you can see, we're still critting and hitting things for billions of damage. I've seen crits go up as high as 4 billion, and when you think about that, especially on bosses or on elite packs, where, you know, the multi-shot is hitting twice because you've gotten it down to low enough health, that is a huge amount of damage. Demon Hunters can deal the damage, guys. Don't let people discourage you from playing with the class that you want to play because monks and barbs are doing really good right now. Demon Hunters are good. They do have fun, cool looking abilities that can stomp things. Now, right now I have cold up. I know that immediately after cold, I'm going to get fire. So whenever I see that, I try and find a bunch of mobs so that I can really make the most out of that damage boost. It has about 20% uptime, right? So I try to maximize that as best that I can. So right now, I know I have it, and it's gone. But I know that whenever I see the cold pop up, I know right away that the fire is coming next, like I have right now. There we go. I'm trying to figure out where all these sires went. Okay, there we go. So there you go. I don't know if that helps you guys as far as convincing for damage, but can very, very easily take out goblins even on Torment 10 difficulty. Oh, there's one that wants to run away. As you can see, that's quite a nice little haul for loot, at least. Probably gonna fill my bag, so I'm gonna just try and get what I can and just keep moving on for you guys. I don't know if this build is going to be capable of doing the Torment 10 2-minute challenge, just because it's very stop and go, whereas there's other classes right now that are really, really good for utility and being able to move around a lot. But Demon Hunter still provides a great amount of damage. It still provides the ability to being able to pretty easily blast through Torment 10 difficulty. I mean, nothing here has been a challenge except for firewalls, really. And firewalls have nothing to do with RNG or the game. It just has to do with you being good or bad at handling environment. And clearly, that's not my A+ game. So there we go, just elite packs. Not really a factor at all. So you can see with Vault, I'm able to Vault, and because of the resource cost reduction, it costs barely any discipline. It also works in conjunction with the 2-piece bonus from this set, which is every time you use your generator, you gain 1 discipline back. So right now I believe Vault costs, yeah, 8 discipline. Here's a Blood Goblin, and it's gone. So definitely still huge damage potential here, guys. If you liked Demon Hunters and you like playing multi-shot Demon Hunter back in Season 3, it has only gotten better, and hey, maybe you're looking for a class that suits you. I do have to say that this has a pretty, I would say, low skill cap. It's mostly gear-based. It's not very difficult to left-click and right-click and just spray out huge damage with your arrows. Once you have this, it's pretty easy to have fun with it. So we got Power Pylon. And there goes the Rift Guardian. So I mean, there you guys go. There's a little bit of a demo. There's hopefully as good of an explanation as I could give for you guys. I know this video was really, really long, but I appreciate you guys bearing with me through it. I tried to cover as much as I could with this video, so if you guys liked what you saw, and you guys thought it was a good guide, hey, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. I'm going to be posting a lot more guides. I'm going to try and vary it up to show some of the different strengths to not only Unhallowed Essence, but show you guys a little bit of Nats and what you can do with Natalia's set. And if I can get enough pieces of Ancient, I might even try and see how far Martyrs can go. Just because I know that there's people that are going to gear up and they might complete their Martyr set before they get their Natalias or they get their Unhallowed Essence. So how can they optimize that? I'll try and come up with the answers for that, but hey, thanks for watching this video, guys. I'm going to post a link below to my Diablofans Build guide, which covers the exact same information that I talked about in this video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.